Welcome. Tonight, we invite you to journey through the winding, candlelit corridors of one of the most opulent palaces in European history. The Château de Versailles of Kings, a marvel of gilded grandeur and a monument to both splendor and silent suffering. But rather than standing in the polished shoes of a monarch, tonight you will walk in the worn leather slippers of someone quite different. Someone whose life revolved not around proximity to it. This is not a tale of glittering chandeliers and velvet robes, or not only. This is a story about those who stood in shadows behind the gold, who moved quietly through hidden passageways, who woke before dawn so others could rise in silk. We begin with the life of a servant in the palace of Versailles, and what that life may have felt like hour by hour, task by task, breath by breath. So now, wherever you are lying comfortably in your bed, perhaps wrapped in the quiet of night, allow yourself to slow down. Let your mind drift into the past, into dust motes dancing in torchlight, into a world of rules unspoken, labor unseen, and rituals that never truly slept. Now, imagine yourself at Versailles, not as a guest, not as nobility, but as one of the many who served the palace. Let us begin. Imagine it is still dark outside. The palace has not yet woken. The air is cool. Even in summer, you are already awake. Your room, if it can be called that, 'tis tucked behind a false wall, or hidden up a narrow flight of stairs the nobles never see. A simple wooden cot, a shared basin of water, and little more. No privacy, no silence. Always the rustling of someone else preparing for their duties. You dress quickly in the prescribed uniform, plain, practical, designed not to be noticed. Servants at Versailles are expected to move like shadows, to be ever present, yet invisible. You step into the corridor. It smells faintly of wax and damp stone. The scent of the palace is a strange blend: perfume and sweat, roast meat and mildew, varnish and age. Versailles is beautiful, yes, but it is also alive, and like anything alive, it breathes, it decays, it has moods. Your task this morning is to prepare the chamber of a noble family. You unlock the doors and slip in quietly. The curtains are drawn tight. The fire has long since died. You begin your routine. Clear the chamber pot, refresh the linen, set out fresh gloves and scented water. You do all this in silence. If your presence is noticed, you have failed. You may be one of hundreds, perhaps thousands, signed to a single building. The palace is vast, far larger than it appears in paintings. Its corridors twist and double back, filled with secret staircases and hidden service passages. You learn them by memory, by instinct, by repetition. Each hour of the day is regimented. Bells ring, not for freedom, but for duty. The rising bell, the breakfast summons, the dressing ceremony. Everything must be orchestrated, timed, perfect. You are not permitted to sit unless granted leave. You may not speak unless spoken to. You may not look a noble directly in the eyes unless they allow it. Even your route through the halls is dictated by statutes. Step aside quickly, deferentially, for someone of higher rank, even if they are younger, even if they are cruel. You clean, you carry, you wait. You fetch warm towels and chilled wines and powdered wigs. You open doors and close them again, always silently, always quickly, and always with the knowledge that failure, even minor, can bring punishment, or worse, shame. You eat when you can. The servants' meals are plain: black bread, root vegetables, broth gone cold. But even this you may eat hurriedly, standing always ready to be summoned again. The light shifts. By afternoon, your feet ache, but you remain upright, always upright. You pass through the same golden galleries where royalty strolls, but for you, they are not places of pleasure. They are merely corridors to be crossed, duties to fulfill. Some tasks are humiliating. You may be one of the valets assigned to assist in the king's daily dressing. You may stand unmoving for hours, waiting to hand him a glove or pour water over his hands. You may be elbowed aside by a duke who outranks you in the ritual. You are expected to remain calm, grateful even for the opportunity to serve. At dusk, the palace lights begin to glow. Candles flicker, the nobles dine. You wait. You hover nearby with folded napkins and fresh decanters. You remove trays. You clean up spills. You move unseen. When night finally falls and the music fades, your day may not yet be done. Linens must be changed, floors swept, coals banged, perfumes laid out for the morning. And only then, when all is quiet, when even the faint sound of a harpsichord has disappeared down the long marble halls, only then may you return to your cot, to the shared silence of the servants' quarters. Your day has ended, and in a few short hours it will begin again. This was the rhythm of life, a rhythm shaped not by joy or purpose, but by duty, a rhythm that repeated day after day, year after year. To be a servant in Versailles was to live without comfort, without rest, and without freedom. Surrounded by luxury you would never touch. A constant struggle beneath a palace of dreams. Let us shift perspective. Now, instead of being a servant beneath the palace, imagine standing at the center of it all, not as a king, but as a queen. Or rather, as a girl, sent from another land into the eye of a glittering storm. Her name was Maria Antonia, Josepha, Johanna, but the world would know her as Marie Antoinette. She arrived at Versailles not as a ruler, but as a bride, a teenager, barely 14. Born a princess of Austria, the 15th child of Empress Maria Theresa. Her marriage was not a love match. Shit was diplomacy, a treaty made flesh. She was sent to France to strengthen an alliance between empires and to become queen of a country that never quite wanted her. At the border, she was stripped of her Austrian clothes, her jewelry, even her dog replaced with French garments, French customs. She was remade in a single moment. A symbol, not a person. Life in Versailles was dizzying. Rules governed every aspect of court life. Marie Antoinette was expected to follow them all. She did not always succeed. At first, she was quiet, cautious, observing. Her new husband, the future Louis XVI, was shy, indecisive, and uninterested. Their marriage remained unconsummated for years, and whispers grew. Why hadn't she produced an heir? She infertile, cold, frivolous. Under that pressure, Marie Antoinette began to seek escape from expectations, from ritual, from the weight. She withdrew into a small inner circle. She took refuge in fashion, extravagant gowns, elaborate hairstyles that reached towards the ceiling. She hosted masked balls and private performances. She laughed too loudly, spent too freely. And above all, she longed to feel alive. She retreated often to the Petit Trianon, a small private palace on the grounds of Versailles. There, she created her own world, a pastoral fantasy. She had a miniature farm built with whitewashed cottages and perfumed cows, where she and her ladies could pretend to be shepherdesses, far from the noise of court and the burdens of royalty. The world beyond the palace was changing. France was groaning under the weight of debt, food shortages, and class resentment. The lavish spending of Versailles became a symbol of everything the people hated. And Marie Antoinette, foreign, aloof, and extravagant, became an easy target. Pamphlets mocked her. Caricatures twisted her image into that of a heartless seductress, a traitor, a spendthrift. The infamous phrase, "Let them eat cake," though she never said, it clung to her like perfume gone sour. When the French Revolution exploded in 1789, the royal family's world cracked open. Crowds stormed the palace gates. The king and queen were forced to leave Versailles, taken to Paris under armed guard, prisoners in their own kingdom. In the years that followed, Marie Antoinette's life became one of confinement and loss. Her husband was executed, her children taken from her. Her name, once whispered in admiration, was now spat in hatred. She was tried before a revolutionary tribunal. The charges were wild: conspiracy, treason, even incest. The trial was a spectacle. The verdict predetermined. On the morning of October 16, 1793, Marie Antoinette was led through the streets of Paris in a cart, her once magnificent hair cut short, her gown plain. The crowds jeered. She remained silent. At the scaffold, she reportedly stepped on the executioner's foot and apologized. "Pardon me, monsieur. I did not do it on purpose." And then she was gone. History has painted Marie Antoinette in many colors. As a villain, a victim, a martyr, a fool. But she was also simply a girl turned queen who danced briefly at the heart of power before the music stopped. She did not build Versailles, but she came to symbolize all that was wrong with it. And in the end, she was devoured by the same machine of spectacle that once crowned her. You've walked the grand corridors, yes, the hall of mirrors gleaming with candlelight, the salons with their painted ceilings and endless gilding. But Versailles was also a maze. Behind the ceremony, behind the spectacle, there was another palace, a hidden one. A palace of doors behind doors, walls that weren't what they seemed, staircases that led nowhere and everywhere. These were the secret passages of Versailles. They weren't merely architectural flourishes. These hidden spaces were functional, necessary, and deeply symbolic. They allowed the court to function like a stage performance, glamorous in front, but constantly managed from behind the scenes. Some of these hidden doors were purely practical. Servants used them to enter and exit rooms without being seen. They allowed for invisible cleaning, quick retrieval of items, and the constant upkeep of the palace's massive daily operations. There were thousands of staff, and they couldn't be seen cluttering the halls where dukes and marquises walked. These passages made the elite forget the hands that served them, but others held deeper intrigue. Let us begin with Marie Antoinette's secret door. On the night of October 5th, 1789, as a furious crowd stormed the gates of Versailles, the Queen fled her bedchamber not through the main door, but through a concealed panel in the wall. A hidden route, just behind the bed, led her through a twisting passage to safety. That night, the royal family would be taken from Versailles forever, and the Queen's escape route became legend. That door is still there, perfectly blended into the wall. If you didn't know it was there, you would never guess. A panel in the boiserie. No handle, no frame. Just a soft push in the right spot. Then there are the corridors used by the king's mistresses. Even the mighty Louis XIV, the Sun King himself, relied on secrecy. His favorite, Madame de Montespan, is said to have had discreet access routes to his private chambers. Affairs of state were public, but affairs of the heart, never. There are also whispers, never confirmed, of hidden prayer rooms where certain queens or kings would retreat for solitude, and even rooms designed for eavesdropping, built with acoustics that allowed certain courtiers to listen in on conversations one floor below. And what of the king's private apartments? While Versailles is known for its grandeur, the king also maintained a more modest set of rooms tucked behind the public ones. These spaces were accessible only through private doors, used for escape, reflection, or sometimes simple peace. Even today, restoration teams occasionally discover something new. A walled-off staircase, an unused hallway. Archaeologists and historians use ground-penetrating radar, architectural records, and ancient inventories to trace what once was. But Versailles still holds secrets. Not every passage is known. Not every door has been opened. And so, as you lie in your bed now, picturing candlelight flickering across gold-leafed walls, know that behind every grand scene there was another, quieter world, moving just out of sight. And sometimes, what was behind the wall mattered more than what was in front of it. Let us now take a seat. Not just any seat, but one set before a gleaming silver gilt plate beneath chandeliers of hand-cut crystal, in the royal dining chamber of the Sun King himself. To dine at Versailles was not merely to eat. It was to perform, and to be seen eating was often more important than the food itself. Versailles hosted many meals, but the most theatrical of them all was the Grand Cavern, the ceremonial public dinner where the king and his family dined while being observed by an audience of nobles, ambassadors, and sometimes even commoners granted access to the gallery. It was dining as spectacle, etiquette as opera. Imagine the ritual. The king enters, accompanied by a train of pages and guards. Everyone rises, tea, sits, and only then may others sit. The meal is brought in, not all at once, but in processions courses, delivered in waves by liveried servants, each item placed with military precision. The food itself, often impressive in scale and variety. There were roasted swans, peacocks with their feathers reattached after cooking, pyramids of fruit glazed in syrup, soups perfumed with exotic spices from the East Indies, entire boars, sculpted sugar displays, and gilded pastries in the shape of mythological scenes. Yet taste was not always the point. Many dishes were made to dazzle the eyes and impress foreign dignitaries. What mattered more was timing, temperature, and the complex ballet of service. Wine, too, was a ritual, not poured by just anyone, but by specific officers of the royal household. One might handle the bottle, another the glass, another the tasting. Each sip the king took had been tasted before him, partly to ensure quality, and partly to ensure survival. But there were other meals more intimate, though still steeped in ceremony. Louis XIV preferred early, heavy lunches and small suppers. He often dined with his close circle in smaller salons, where laughter and conversation were freer, though never informal by modern standards. Later kings, like Louis XV, were said to be more sensual in their tastes, preferring rich sauces, truffles, and more private dining. The kitchens of Versailles were a world unto themselves, hot and chaotic. They stretched beneath and beyond the palace walls, and even today, historians struggle to map them completely. Fires roared all day. Copper pots clanged. Dozens of cooks worked under head chefs who reported directly to royal stewards. Yet, for all this splendor, not everything was perfect. Food spoiled quickly in summer. The palace, despite its beauty, was difficult to ventilate. Sanitation was primitive, and meat could rot before it reached the table. Ice was a luxury, and the absence of refrigeration meant elaborate methods of preservations, salting, sugaring, sealing in wax. And outside those golden halls, most of France starved. Bread riots erupted in the cities. Peasants lived on onions and gruel. And while the court of Versailles dined off porcelain from China, entire provinces struggled to feed their children. This contrasts the lavish feast versus the empty bowl became one of the great symbols of the monarchy's disconnection from its people. It wasn't simply the decadence of the meals. It was that the spectacle never paused, even as the world outside fell apart. So as you now picture the gleaming forks, the folded linens, the scent of roasted chestnuts and candied violet snow, that this final segment, this meal at Versailles, was not merely food. It was history served in courses. Each dish a symbol, each bite a last indulgence before the storm. And now, as we leave the palace behind, let your thoughts drift gently away from candlelit halls and velvet robes, from hidden doors and whispered rituals, from servants in silence and queens in shadow. Tonight, you walked through Versailles, not as a tourist, but as someone who truly saw it. Good night, and sleep well.